Good evening. I'm Joanne Hatchett, and I'd like to welcome everyone. I'm the PSC Partners Medical Science Liaison and parent of my son living with PSC. I want to thank you for joining us for the third webinar in the PSC Partners 2025 webinar series, A Collective Voice for Change, How You Can Shape PSC Research. I'm excited to hear the informative talks from Sarah Curup about the PSC Partners research initiatives, as well as updates and new information from Rachel Gomel, Mary Vyas, and Brian Thorsen, as they discuss how the patient registry impacts PSC research. In addition, we have two board members, Dr. Mahesh Krishna, who will discuss his role on the research committee and more, and Fred Sabernick, a long-term board member, who will moderate the Q&A session. A brief overview. The PSC Partners Research Grants Program began in 2007. The patient registry initiated patient-centered research in 2014. The next major step involving patient-focused experiences was the PSC Partners externally led patient-focused drug development meeting developed in conjunction with FDA in 2020, where 272 people affected by PSC shared their stories, symptoms, and how PSC affected their daily lives via video, panel discussions, plus the many participants who shared their comments. In addition, 819 people responded to the Our Voices survey with hundreds of comments. You'll be hearing more details soon from each of our speakers. I hope you're as excited as I am to hear how you and your voice can impact PSC research and drug development. Next slide, please. Let's take a moment to cover a few logistics for tonight. As you know, this is a Zoom webinar, so attendees, everyone's video is off and your microphones are muted. Please submit your questions in the Q&A box as you listen to each presentation or during the live Q&A session. The Q&A box is located on the Zoom control bar, which is usually at the bottom of your screen. Please do not put questions in the chat. Use the Q&A box. But if you're using a tablet or a cell phone, you may need to scroll to find your control bar. We welcome your questions. We also offer closed captioning live transcriptions, which can be found in the lower right corner of most screens. If you're on a phone or tablet, look for the CC Show Captions button. You can also find translations through that CC closed captioning button. To access translations, click the arrow up icon next to Show Caption CC. Then click Speaking Language and choose your language. You will then need to confirm the pop-up of the language you chose by clicking Save. Lastly, we encourage you to fill out the post-webinar survey at the end of the webinar, and we greatly appreciate all of your feedback and suggestions. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Mahesh Krishna, who is a board member of PSC Partners, a current internal medicine resident at Yale New Haven Hospital, and a graduate of Johns Hopkins School of Medicine. Diagnosed at age 15 with PSC, Mahesh found hope and support through PSC Partners. He's since been extensively involved in the organization and served as writer, mentor, moderator, research committee member, and co-chair of the Microbiome International Collaborative Research Network, ICRN group. Thank you, Mahesh, for all of that and more. Mahesh is passionate about finding a cure for PSC. In his spare time, he enjoys basketball, chess, Philly sports, and spending time with his partner and two cats, Eve and Hades. Over to you, Mahesh.
Hi, Joanne. Thanks for the very kind introduction. Hi, everyone who's on the webinar. My name is Mahesh. I'm one of the board members of PSC Partners Seeking a Cure. And I'm happy to talk to you kind of about some of the work we've been doing on the research committee and how we've basically been trying to find and roadmap a plan to find a cure for PSC. Um, as well as introduce Sarah, who will be talking more extensively about all the different ways you can get involved, as well as more details about the projects. As a member of the board and as a member of the research committee, I've been working closely with the staff as well as our other board members and helping create a research plan that we hopefully can use to utilize to help fund research as well as have a strategic way to find a cure for PSC. I think we've made a lot of progress over the past few years. I joined the board a couple years ago and then have had PSC for 12 years. And I think the progress that we've made over the past couple years is tremendous and is doing so much to find a cure for PSC. Some of the initiatives that I've been a part of include the ICRN, in which I was the co-chair of the microbiome working group, creating the initial strategic plan, reviewing grants that are submitted by researchers for new ideas that they have for helping understand PSC better that may lead to cures later in the future, as well as our most ambitious project yet, WIND, which is a multi-center effort led by PSC partners, first of its kind, that Sarah will talk more about. And I've really enjoyed my time with PC Partners, and I think we're doing so much to try and create a world where no patient has to worry about PSC. And with that, let me introduce Sarah, who I've worked closely with as well. She's been amazing advancing PSC Partners initiatives. For her, liver disease runs in the family. Because of this, she's committed to finding a cure for PSC through collaborative research that prioritizes the voices of people living with or impacted by PSC. She has contributed to published research highlighting the quality of life for people with rare diseases and has extensive experience helping individuals and teams navigate the research landscape. She holds a master's degree in nonprofit administration, a bachelor's of science degree in community engagement education, and over 15 years of management experience in the nonprofit sector. And I'll hand it off to Sarah.
Thanks, Mahesh. So I want to start by drawing attention to this background image of puzzle pieces. PSC Partners logo depicts puzzle pieces coming together, and that's exactly what happens every day with our research. Each person in this community holds a piece to the puzzle of how to achieve our shared mission. Each research program does too. Tonight, the important piece we'll be featuring is the patient registry, one of our research programs which has directly enabled so many other important pieces to connect. It's inspired extensive collaboration and facilitated partnerships both internally and externally that are driving research toward treatments and a cure while providing education and support for those impacted. Next slide, please. Before describing any of our research programs, I'd like to provide an overview of our research strategy. As Joanne mentioned, many years of community-based activities have shaped our understanding of patient needs and priority research questions. Altogether, more than 500 people participated in the Roadmap webinar series and think tanks, the Our Voices survey, and the Patient-Focused Drug Development Forum. This sparked a rigorous review process where community representatives evaluated the community's ideas and ultimately identified priority areas for research. It's a great example of how the registry's infrastructure facilitated a cascade of community engagement and impacted our organization's research. Next slide. The organization's 4 strategic research priority areas are depicted here. They're intentionally broad so that we can adapt as the field of PSC research progresses, as community needs evolve, and as more voices are heard. In other words, even if you weren't involved in any of the steps leading up to these priorities, or even if your particular idea didn't make it on this list of the top 4, your voice can still be heard and make a difference in our research programs today. Next slide. I don't have time tonight to discuss all of our research partnerships, but I will highlight a handful of our active research programs and activities before I introduce the registry team. Next slide. First is the Research Grants Program, which supports preclinical, clinical, and translational studies aligned with our organization's priority areas for research. PSC Partners and PSC Partners Canada award annual seed grants all around the world that address an important and novel, basic, or clinical research question related to PSC or closely associated diseases such as inflammatory bowel disease or cholangiocarcinoma. It's not just a program that's funded by the patient community, it's also a program guided by both researcher and community voices. Next slide. The impact report from 2024 should be available soon, and it shares details about the grants we've historically funded, totaling $5.15 million. It also shares more about the community members who've helped with reviews and more about the community engaged process. Next slide. Community voices are integrated throughout the entire grant cycle. When the cycle begins, letters of intent are screened for alignment with our community research priorities and assessed for patient partnership. Next, applications are reviewed by two separate committees. Our scientific and medical advisors review applications for scientific rigor and feasibility, while our dedicated community reviewers consider factors like community impact, reach, and mission alignment. Community reviewers contribute to 50% of the application scores, meaning that the lived experiences of patients, relatives, and caregivers are directly shaping the projects that get selected and the progress we've seen with this program over the years. Next slide. During the review process, we also ask, to what extent are patients involved in the research? We encourage patient partnership even in types of research where it might not be common or might not seem possible at first glance. Patient partnership can occur in a number of ways, from study design and execution to knowledge translation once results are ready. Often, the patient registry plays a key role here, as a number of researchers have proposed projects that utilize the patient registry as part of their study. Next slide. If you're looking for an example of patient-led research, consider our research program WIND-PSC. WIND-PSC is a patient-led, prospective, multi-center observational cohort with patients followed up to 5 years. An observational study is a type of research study where researchers observe and collect data without interfering with or changing the medical treatment of the participants. PSC Partners decided to launch the WIN-PSC study in direct response to the community's desire for treatments that slow disease progression. Results from the organization's 2020 Our Voices survey revealed that developing treatments to slow PSC progression was a top research priority. PSC Partners recognized this critical unmet need within the community and took initiative to address it through this innovative patient-led study. WIN-PSC is unique because of the way it's funded and the way the study is designed. It's a groundbreaking study that's entirely planned, financed, and overseen by PSC Partners. It's really unprecedented for a rare disease patient advocacy organization to have launched a global study of this magnitude. PSC Partners built a dedicated group of funders, established a strong leadership team, and designed the study collaboratively with input from regulatory authorities, top PSC researchers, and patients. This collective effort ensures that the study is patient-centric, reduces participant burden, and its goals are aligned with what truly matters to the PSC community. Next slide. The study is designed to address the FDA concerns for real-world data for use in confirmatory studies, and recruitment is currently underway. Approximately 2,000 adult patients with PSC will be enrolled at up to 20 sites in North America and Europe, and the study is carefully designed around patient standard of care to minimize additional burden for participants. The in-person visits are aligned with participants' annual medical appointments, in which there will be some additional blood draws and a non-invasive liver imaging test. All other visits are done remotely by answering study coordinator calls and filling out patient-reported outcome measure questionnaires. Next slide. Speaking of patient-reported outcome measures, our next research program that reflects the collective patient voice is called the Symptom Assessment Project, or SAP. In this case, Roadmap and multiple patient focus groups led PSC Partners to identify the need for valid, reliable instruments that can be used to measure PSC symptoms, especially in the context of future clinical trials that are attempting to evaluate whether and to what extent a treatment is improving how patients feel and function. Thanks to the patients who shared their voices, several symptoms were identified, and of those, SAP is focusing on the ones lacking valid and reliable instruments for PSC, namely fatigue, brain fog, and liver pain. Developing and testing these tools is a highly involved process that engages patients, researchers, and community members. Next slide. One of the exciting things we've done this past year is invite the community to help choose the next major research project to support through our International Collaborative Research Network, or ICRN. Over 60 experts and community members worked side by side in our ICRN working groups. Their discussions were guided by the community's ideas generated in the Roadmap Initiative and formalized in our strategic research plan. ICRN working groups were collaboratively led by community members as co-chairs alongside PSC research experts. They developed project proposals that could drive research in the areas of PSC's pathophysiology, such as inflammation, fibrosis, immunology, the connection between the gut and the liver, diagnosis and prognosis, clinical trials and endpoints, transplant and recurrent PSC, and early detection and treatment of CCA. Then, through 235 through surveys, 235 community members weighed in on each of those project proposals, and scientific reviewers gave their input too. Now, PSC partners will use all of that input to select the first project that'll be funded through ICRN and coordinated with PSC partners leadership, showing how community voices can help shape a research idea, develop the proposal, and execute on the project itself. Next slide. Soon you'll hear about the patient registry's infrastructure and how it reflects individual and collective voices. Two recent and powerful examples are shown here. First is the acute cholangitis patient survey. Acute cholangitis is a significant but poorly understood PSC complication, and limited data exists characterizing the patient experience before, during, and after these events. Efforts from the ICRN and the Forum for Collaborative Research led to this impactful survey, which was available on the patient registry and Google, and was launched collaboratively by PSC partners and PSC support. There were 427 responses in just 2 weeks, with results demonstrating a broad dynamic range of acute cholangitis frequency and severity of symptoms. Fatigue and anxiety were both shown to be under-recognized symptoms that are reported, warranting further study. This survey is a stepping stone for next steps, which involve initiating a patient-reported outcome measure to complement the clinical definition for use in clinical studies. The second survey to highlight is the cholangiocarcinoma patient survey, which demonstrates yet another multinational collaboration that used the patient registry, yielded well over 400 responses, and had powerful results that will be presented at major medical meetings. In this case, it was 463 responses. The primary goal of the survey was to identify knowledge and patient communication gaps in anticipation of improved new screening tests for cholangiocarcinoma, or CCA, which is a rare bile duct cancer that patients with PSC are at an increased risk of developing. The results identified a clear need for accurate early CCA detection in patients with PSC, and also gaps in provider and patient education on CCA's risk and surveillance. Importantly, these gaps may significantly improve with non-invasive, accurate, and reliable CCA screening tests. Survey results imply potential next steps could involve appropriate education and communication strategies to be developed and implemented before the launch of any new CCA test impacting the PSC community. Next slide. Again, it's never too late for your voice to be heard in PSC Partners research. If you're in the registry, you will hear about opportunities like those two surveys directly to your inbox if you're eligible. The patient registry also has all the contact information you might need to learn more about your eligibility for studies like WIND PSC. So please be sure to update your data annually so that you can get accurate, personalized opportunities through the registry, still respecting confidentiality. Whether or not you're in the registry, opportunities for the entire community, including relatives, caregivers, friends, those come through social media and email. So please be on the lookout for messaging from us there. And until then, please also consider supporting our research programs. It's always helpful to support by spreading the word and by donating. And you can write to me, Sarah at pscpartners.org, to learn more about opportunities for volunteering. And with that in mind, I'd like to take this moment to introduce one of PSC Partners' dedicated volunteers and shift to the next important piece of tonight's program. Rachel Gomel has served as a full-time volunteer at PSC Partners during the past 19 years. She's the founder of the PSC Partners Patient Registry and led the registry as director until just recently. She currently serves as senior advisor to the registry team and continues to be involved in many facets of PSC Partners. Rachel serves on the board of directors of PSC Partners and PSC Partners Canada. Rachel, I can't wait to hear your story and can't thank you enough for sharing your voice. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Hello, we're here to show you how you can drive and shape PSC research through the registry. I'll start with my brief story. Next slide. It was 2009. PSC Partners was 4 years old, a tiny, mighty team of volunteers consisting of PSC patients and caregivers. We were tirelessly trying anything and everything that came our way, determined to place PSC on the map. We didn't flinch at traveling all the way to Oslo to attend a Norwegian PSC meeting because we had heard that a state-of-the-art center for the study of PSC had just opened. We were energized and empowered by the brilliant North American and European minds who were committed to understanding PSC, which was sadly described as the last black box of liver diseases. That box had to be split open. There were rumblings of patient communities significantly reshaping research. We looked to them for inspiration. How could we as patients facilitate and speed up research? We were told that registries might be the answer for rare diseases like PSC. A brief attempt to explore Google Health by a patient led nowhere. Google Health folded. The NIH announced a workshop for rare disease stakeholders. The title of the meeting was enough to get me going. The announcement read, Advancing Rare Disease Research, the Intersection of Patient Registries, Biorepositories, and Clinical Data. Off to Washington, D.C., I went on an expedition to find out how PSC Partners could start a registry to locate and unite under one umbrella PSCers so thinly scattered throughout the world. Extremely shy and so passionate, I could not recognize myself as I mingled with people from the NIH, FDA, NORD, physicians, patient advocates, and IT experts. Caring physicians told their stories of collecting extremely valuable patient data that had been forgotten on dusty shelves. One researcher said, in the hands of patients, these data would always stay alive and flourish. The patients were the best custodians of their own data. That did it. I was in. I signed up for a registry boot camp organized by Genetic Alliance, led by a rare disease mom, like many of us here, formerly a pastor, and now a scientist teaching a group of us how to start a registry. I returned home to find an enthusiastic Ricky Safer, our founder of PSC Partners, cheering me on. We now needed a physician researcher to advise us. That was a no-brainer. Dr. Chris Bolus, already our friend and advisor, was on board. We had one big hurdle. It costs many thousands of dollars to start a registry, and we certainly didn't have the funds. The solutions came from the NIH. They launched a selective registry pilot project to which we applied. PSC Partners was one of the 30 rare disease groups that were chosen. Every weekly meeting with the NIH required hours of preparation. Dr. Bolus never left our side. After 2 years of hard work with the NIH, we launched our registry. In 2014, out of the 30 organizations, 2 succeeded to launch their registry. It was exhilarating. A year later, I knew we had reached an important milestone when, at the annual liver meeting, for the first time ever, a team of drug developers approached Ricky Safer and me and with great excitement said, "How many people do you have in the registry? Really? 600? Your numbers make it possible for us to consider conducting a clinical trial for PSC." And recently, a researcher described our registry participants as a most responsive group who clearly understand their impact on advancing research. Next slide, please. In the early days, we were all trying to define what the PSC Partners Registry would mean to us. We weren't sure of the many functions this tool could serve. We only knew that our registry was an online platform where basic data on living with PSC was confidentially collected and stored. We were far from the research hub I was longing for. Today, I can confidently say that the registry does facilitate and expedite research through surveys served to registry participants and through collaborations with researchers who seek answers from the rich data. The registry is also a tool for registry participants who can use the registry to document and track their PSC journey, learn about research and clinical trials that are available to them. From the get-go, the research has been open to everyone with PSC, wherever they are in the world. Parents and caregivers can join on behalf of their children. And etched into our registry is the rule that no patient identifying data ever leaves the registry. Your information is stripped of all identifiers before it's shared with researchers. Next slide, please. Where well-implemented registries and active patient organizations exist, the likelihood for developing a treatment for the disease in question is increased. This is a quote by Eurordis, Nord, and Cord. These are international, European, North American, and Canadian rare disease organizations. The quote inspired me very early on. We now certainly have a well-implemented registry housing the data of so many more than 600 and are well on our way to achieving our dream of developing solid patient-partnered and patient-driven research towards a cure. I have handed to Mary Vyas the responsibility of the registry. She's now registry director among her many other responsibilities. She's vice president of PSC Partners Strategic Initiatives and the co-founder and president of the Canadian affiliate PSC Partners Canada. She's a member of the research team and represents both PSC Partners and PSC Partners Canada externally. For the past 10 years, she has been one of the important pillars of this organization. Over to you, Mary.
Hello, thank you so much, Rachel. Before I jump into my part of the presentation, I'd like to comment on the picture that was on the previous slide. Thank you. That is Rachel Gomel and Joanne Hatchett at a breakfast event at the 2014 conference in Denver, Colorado. And I remember this because this was the first conference that I attended. And I remember being at that breakfast, and this woman stood up and explained that she was starting this registry, and she had this cardboard sign that said, "Come and sign up." And I went up to her and I said, "Hi, you don't know me, but I'd like to help you with the registry." And here we are 10 years later. Next slide, please. So I'd like to introduce the registry team. As Rachel said, I'm serving as the director. Rachel Gomel will never leave the registry. She will guide us as the senior advisor in all decisions that affect the registry. Brian Thorsen, who you're going to hear from later, is the assistant director of the registry. And I'd like to take an opportunity and we'll hear more about Brian later, but we also have on the team Sharon Nance. Sharon is the registry coordinator and curator. Sharon's role involves patient support and account curation, as well as being a writer for much of the content. There is a good chance that Sharon is the individual on the registry team that participants hear from about their individual accounts. Susan Odell is the registry analyst and liaison with Across Matrix, the registry platform. Susan implements surveys and ensures registry data is accurate through incredible data curation. And we are so lucky to have this incredible team. And as Rachel mentioned, we also have on the team Dr. Chris Bolus as our scientific advisor. Next slide, please. So I just want to state the registry mission. The registry mission is to facilitate, expedite, and advance patient-centered research towards treatments and a cure for PSC by educating, supporting, and engaging all PSC patients to participate in patient-reported and clinical research. While PSC Partners is mostly a North American-focused or patient organization, there are many excellent patient organizations around the world. And the registry is focused on all people with PSC. It is not limited to those who are in North America. And when we say all, it's because the registry aims to be representative of the global community across all stages of disease, including all ages, post-transplant and deceased, and to reach underserved communities. Next slide, please. So what is our vision? We envision, this is what we work for day in and day out. We envision the PSC Partners Patient Registry as a central PSC hub with a global reach that fosters collaboration, aims to support, educate, and empower patients to actively engage in research, and generates fertile ground for researchers, clinicians, industry to turn to the registry for valuable data. It is so important to us that the needs, the concerns, and the lived experiences of people living with PSC will be captured in unique and robust data that will shape PSC Partners-led research, as Sarah explained, and will potentially drive policy change. The registry serves as a valuable, adaptable, and agile tool that readily responds to pressing research questions and fills research gaps. Next slide, please. So, what are the strengths of the PSC Partners Registry? You know, representatives from PSC Partners are in close contact with many advocates for many rare disease organizations. And one thing we do know is that our patient registry, through Rachel's leadership, is incredibly strong and unusually strong in the space. So patient needs are the guiding star for decision-making for the registry team. We are very careful that our data is as curated as possible to expedite research. What we mean by that is that the data is as clean and rigorous as possible so that when a researcher comes to us and asks a question of the data or asks for a de-identified data set, that data is ready to go, that they will trust that that data is actually representing cleanly and effectively what the patients have responded to in the surveys. The registry is IRB approved. What that means, well, it's approved for both the content on the registry and there is an annual review of our operations. An IRB is an institutional review board, which ensures that participants in the registry are protected. Rachel and Brian recently hosted an interview with the IRB that governs the PSC Partners Registry. You can find that in the news feed on the PSC Partners Registry website. And if you're curious about what an IRB does, they had a lovely conversation about what an IRB is and how it protects participants' rights in the patient registry. The registry team are all HIPAA trained. I'm just getting a note that the interview hasn't been posted yet, but it will be soon. The registry team are all HIPAA trained. HIPAA is a federal law protecting the privacy of patient health information. So all of the registry team are HIPAA trained and we are monitored for the compliance with that by the IRB. Again, no identifying information ever leaves the registry. And we are also strengthened by the fact that we have an active academic team member, Dr. Chris Bullis. Next slide, please. Okay, surveys. This is basically what the registry is. It's a place where a participant goes, sets up an account, and takes surveys. There are a bunch of surveys, but they have different characteristics. The main survey, the most important survey for the registry, is the clinical survey. This is the core survey that will collect your PSC health history, your PSC diagnosis history, your current symptoms, your family history, and more. In the current form of the registry, there will be a new clinical survey published every year. And we ask that participants go in and update that every year to track the journey of your PSC experience over time. This will also help ensure that any communications that you receive from the registry about potential eligibility to join a study will be appropriate to where you are with your PSC. We've tried to make that easy with the new platform. When you go in to update your clinical survey, you don't have to fill it out again. It will be presented to you, and you need to go in and confirm, are these all still accurate? You have an opportunity to change things that have changed, and otherwise say, yep, everything looks good. And then we have other active surveys. Right now, we have a few going. And some of these are surveys that Sarah talked about on some of those collaborative research projects. So we have a health equity survey. We have the PSC flare cholangitis attack survey, the PSC and cholangiocarcinoma survey. We have just launched a survey for the bereaved, and we have a healthcare provider map submission form so that participants can share who they receive their PSC care from so that other participants can learn from each other. We also have past surveys that are no longer active, for example, the Our Voices survey, and so on. Next slide, please. So how does this work? So we collect all this data, and then what happens? How does this engage with research? Well, there's a bunch of things that can happen. Some of the things that do happen are, first of all, the registry offers, we offer our support for drug development and clinical trials. And the way that happens is through protocol review and feedback. We offer confidential recruitment for a study or a clinical trial, and we share latest news on trials with registry participants. I want to just spend a second talking about the confidential recruitment. The way that works is that if a independent investigator or somebody who is running a clinical trial approaches the registry and asks for help to recruit for their study or trial, they will tell us what the characteristics are. We will then look in the registry and find the patients that meet those characteristics, those inclusion or exclusion criteria. And we will then send, if the patient has elected to receive emails from the registry, we will then send an email that says, you may be eligible for this study or clinical trial opportunity. We do not give your information to the investigator or the company. It is then up to each participant to contact. And then how can researchers engage with the registry? So they can come to the registry and ask us questions of the data. They can request access to de-identified data. They can ask for a data set that we can provide to them. They can be connected with study participants. They can propose to implement a collaborative survey. For example, the health equity survey in PSC, the acute cholangitis, et cetera. And then we have these special projects. So Sarah earlier talked about the symptom assessment project. The symptom assessment project is supported by the registry and in some very specific ways. First of all, the registry, when the collaborative team was identifying which symptoms they wanted to develop tools for, focus groups were formed, and those focus groups came from the registry. Once the SAP decided on the symptoms they were going to study, they needed to recruit participants to participate in in-depth interviews about their symptoms. Again, they turned to the registry to recruit because we had data on who was experiencing what symptoms. And the next step, now that these assessment tools have been developed, we're going to implement them in the registry, and all participants are going to be able to take them and will be asked to take them periodically so that the researchers can study how these instruments perform. What's the process? There is a formal process. There is we have a data sharing agreement that has been prepared by our lawyers. We, when a researcher comes and asks, the entire team, including the academic advisor, review the request. We make sure there is ethics approval in place. And if they agree to our terms of data sharing, we are happy to share the data with anybody who is doing work to understand PSC. Next slide. So what's next? This is the exciting thing. What's happening? This is where we are, but what's next? This year, we hope to, we will. We're working hard to enhance the registry to have translations. Currently, the registry is in English, but we plan before 2025 is out to have French and Spanish available. We will be doing, as I mentioned, annual updates of the clinical survey. We plan to have an effort to have some PSC partners authored publications where we look at the data, PSC partners, the research team, look at the data and publish an answer to a question about what are the patients experiencing, something that is not currently reflected in the literature. We will continue collaborative research and publications as we have been doing. We currently have over 18 publications, either articles or abstracts, posters at professional meetings. And you can find them on the registry website. Brian will show you that in a moment. We will be developing new surveys. For example, the one that is currently in the works is a post-transplant survey. And then it's exciting. Our new platform has some really cool tools, and we hope to expand the use of these new platform resources. They include things like medication tracking, symptom tracking. There is the option for electronic health record integration into the registry. And because this new platform is growing, there are new tools under development. Next slide, please. And now I would like to introduce Brian Thorsen, the Assistant Director of the registry. So after his PSC diagnosis in 2020, Brian began as a volunteer for PSC Partners before joining the registry team in 2023. With a background as a university math and statistics educator, he has always been passionate, empowering people to engage in and with research. He currently serves as the assistant director for PSC Partners Patient Registry, and he lives in Oakland. Take it away, Brian. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary. And just picking back off of the way you connected with Rachel, I remember how I first got involved was by you and I happening to be in one of those randomly sorted breakout rooms during a virtual conference. We connected over having both been to Berkeley and then the stats part, and then one thing led to another, and here I am today, and really is a pleasure to be here. So I get to show us the nuts and bolts of what's going on with the registry. So I'm going to give us a guided tour of the registry website. So to start off, we're here on pscpartnersregistry.org. This is a public portion of the website that everyone is welcome to use. So if you're a relative of someone who has PSC, or if you're just curious to learn more, all of this right here is available to you. Okay, so there's a whole wealth of resources. I'm just going to highlight a few of these. To start off, we have the news and resources section. If you go through the news, and particularly the Viaduct newsletter, you can see all sorts of articles around clinical trials, around patient impact and research. We just put out a new one just a couple weeks ago, so go in and read what the latest news is. Another thing out here, I want to highlight the physician map. So this is a map of healthcare providers that have been listed by participants in the registry. So most of these are gastroenterologists or hepatologists. There are some primary care doctors and other specialties. This is not necessarily an endorsement of their care, but what this does mean is that someone else who has PSC does see this doctor, and so therefore it's more likely that they're going to have some experience with this. And you can find a lot of the specialists we do work with on this map. So you can go through here. It's not just the United States, we have it around the whole world. And you can search by names, you can filter by country, by state, or even by the provider specialty. Okay. Moving on, I think the most busy page on the website, understandably, is the clinical trials page. So if we go to ongoing clinical trials, We keep an up-to-date list of what's going on with the latest clinical trials, studies, and then some other open surveys. So if you're looking for ways to engage directly in research, here's where you can find out more information about what's going on with clinical trials. And then there's some studies that exist outside of the registry as well. Okay? And when you look through the details, we give an overview of the pages, but I highly recommend if you want to learn more about a study you're interested in, for instance, this Brigham and Women's study, there's some information that is for adult PSC patients in the US, but if you want to look at the full eligibility criteria, we strongly recommend that you go to the clinicaltrials.gov link. They will include the inclusion and exclusion criteria where you can learn more and see whether this study might be a good fit for you. Okay. Connected to the clinical trials page, we do have a related publication. So we try and keep literature relevant to the active drugs or treatments being under study when it comes up for clinical trials. So one major one I want to highlight here is there's been an ongoing study from the Mayo Clinic on oral vancomycin. We know this is a hot topic, so we do have a list of all of the large list of relevant research with some brief commentary to situate you to it. Most of these you can see the full text available without a subscription, but we do so when it's not fully available. Okay. The last thing, if you're wanting to learn more about all these amazing projects we've been doing, you can head over to the registry impact page. And here you can see what's been going on to date. So to date, we have over 2,600 registered participants. You can see those 18 studies that we have put out using registry data. So for instance, here's some results from the acute cholangitis survey. Here's some results. Down here, we have some more about fatigue experiences. This came from the symptom assessment project. And most of these, again, have publicly available links to go through. So all of this is open to anyone. Now, if you join the registry, create a registry account, and we do have tutorials online for that in the tutorials and instructional video section. I'm going to show you what it looks like when you get into the registry platform where you maintain your data and can view all of the tools available to you. So I'm going to hop over here, and this is using a test account that we've set up for these purposes. So again, we're not revealing any information about a patient who's actually in the registry. This is just some made up responses you'll see, so don't worry about that. Okay. So when we land in the registry after creating an account, you'll see that this particular account still has a few studies they have to complete. For instance, the PSC and cholangiocarcinoma patient survey, we're still collecting responses on that, even though we have the report going. Same thing with the cholangitis survey. There's always more we can do with the data. Okay. There's a whole host, as we mentioned, of tools to help you with managing your PSC care. So if we go into the health info section, you'll see, for instance, we can go to the medicine and supplements tab, and you can maintain a list of medications, what the dosage was, what you're currently taking. I remember earlier on in my PSC journey when I was figuring out what medications to be on, went on or so went off it, various things happened. It was really helpful to have a list that I could just print up and show to my doctors rather than having to read it all out for them. And they like it too, of course. Can track other things such as treatments and therapies. So if you are, for instance, getting infusions, you can list it here. You can track procedures. So for instance, if you had an ERCP, you can write down when that happened and make some notes of what the outcomes are. So this is really a tool for you to help manage your PSC care. Yeah. Beyond that, if you connect the EHR connections, it's still a work in progress. So it's something you can try out if you want to. For technical reasons, it's not fully operational for everyone, but you're welcome to try it out. It works on a per clinic basis. So it might be working for one clinic and not the other yet. So if you do encounter issues with that, please let us know and we'll try and get that sorted out for you. All right. The other thing I really want to highlight too are the symptoms and activities. So, journaling all of your symptoms, anything that's going on with diet, any exercise, any stressful things that you have. It's often helpful to look at how those are connected. So we have here, I've set up some samples. This patient might be experiencing itch, difficulty sleeping, and fatigue. So if I'm feeling that today, I can just go in and mark, I have fatigue. I rate it on a severity. Oh, it's not too bad. Maybe it's a 3 today. Definitely could be worse. And then it'll pop up there, and it's very simple. And what's interesting too is if you're doing this and really maintaining it, you can go to the Insights tab, and we can select how we want to look at how these connect. So maybe gardening, how it connects to itch, or fatigue, right? A busy activity, you're out in the weeds. Yeah. And so we can see here, this is zooming in, we can see coincidence of them, and you can really start to see connections if you're tracking these major symptoms over time. Okay. So these are all tools for you. The registry team doesn't super closely look at it. Most of this is actually just on your end. And so we're not using any of this for studies at the time. The main things are going to be through the surveys and studies tab, as we mentioned. So now let's actually look at what you can do to learn more about the PSC experience from the over 2,600 people living in the registry or existing in the registry. So for that, we're going to go over to the survey analysis section. And for this, you have to have your survey completed in order to analyze it. But let's focus on the clinical survey from this year. So it just has the responses for this year. But we can look at, because we already have over 350, 360 responses. So what we might be interested in looking at, for instance, right, is among registry participants, how many of them have been diagnosed with IBD? So I'm going to scroll down here and you can see, does the participant have IBD? You can see the responses. So 253 respondents who took this survey said that they do have IBD, 88 said they don't, and then 14 were not sure. Okay. We can drill in. There's a whole wealth of information, so we can drill in further. So for instance, right, when we were getting ready for the seminar, people were asking what are some other things people would want to look at. Depression and anxiety was one that was highlighted. So I'm going to go to, because I have this ready on page 12. I can go to here and I can see in the past 7 days, how often have participants been bothered by emotional problems? So this is just one question that connects to this type of symptoms. For things like itch, fatigue, and so on, there are more detailed questions that we can drill into. Okay. And then other things that come up too, going back to the cholangitis survey, we do look at and we update this every year. And this is to align it with what the current research needs are. That's part of why we also have the annual survey. So a new thing that we added this year was to start tracking how many cholangitis attacks have you had in the past year? Oh, I'm on the wrong page here. So if we draw down here, we can see how many times has the participant ever experienced a cholangitis attack or PSC flare. So we can see the totals here. And then some other things that we've done in terms of updates, we now added some questions that align with the questions that are collected in the WIN study to help support that and build a larger basis of data to draw from when we're using that for comparison for clinical trials or other settings to try and build a stronger data set there. Okay. So this is just a taste of all the things it can do. I'm sure you have a million questions too. So I want to open up the floor to the group and feel free to ask in the Q&A box. What questions do you have regarding the registry data? We have a little time here where we can drill into the data a little bit just to show you these are things you can do for yourself. Of course, I know there'll probably be some more complicated questions. We'll try and follow up with that. We have Susan, our registry analyst, on deck to try and help if it's a more complicated question we can answer live. Okay. So we'll give some time for people to throw their questions in the chat. And I know I can go into some other sections as well. Okay, so I see a more technical question. Where do you find the clinical survey to complete? So if you haven't taken it yet, when you sign into the registry, the way you do that is you go to the login button, you enter your password and so on. If you haven't been in a couple of years, you're going to have to reset your password and you'll find a button for that. Then we go to the dashboard and you should find the clinical survey right here in this on your landing page. Okay, I know another thing that often comes up while people are looking at other questions is diet of people in PSC. So I'm going to show that one. It's a little trickier. These tools, there are active improvements in progress to make this a little more user-friendly with the visualization, but you can still do a lot with it. So just to orient us, we have 355 people who have PSC in this. And that matters because the diet doesn't give the relative numbers. So if I jump into page 11, we can see the diet. So for instance, right, we might ask how many people are on a gluten-free diet. And we can see, so 33 out of the 355 or so. So a little under 10%. You can drill in with all the different diets here as well. Okay, we see some great questions coming in. See, can you see other factors such as age, gender, and race? You can see age individually, like age of PSC diagnosis, but we don't yet have tools for you to filter by that. Part of that is you have to be careful because if you give people too many of those tools to filter, you can start identifying people. So it's really, we're working on tools so that you can do that in a careful way that maintains confidentiality. Okay. I see a more complicated question. This one's a good question. How many patients have experienced pancreatitis after having an ERCP? Don't have that directly in the questionnaire, so pull that up. That's definitely a good question. We'll try and follow up with that. Okay. Another question, is there a registry for parents of patients? So if you are a caregiver of a patient, you can join the registry on behalf of your child. There are caregiver profiles where you can set up, and so you can add your child's information. When they turn 18, they need to be granted access or whatever the legal age is where you reside. I know it's different in a few countries, so that they can allow you to still be connected as a parent if you want to help maintain it, but they do have to give consent for that once they become an adult. Okay. Yeah, so other questions around overlap with PSC. We can look at overlap with other conditions. I believe that's on the first page. If we look at, for instance, autoimmune hepatitis or autoimmune sclerosing cholangitis, we see 41, so a little over 10% of the respondents in this survey. Let's see. Is there a way to see a percentage of people that got re-diagnosed after transplant? We definitely have that. We have that here. I just have to find what page it's on. It's under the transplant section. And then while I'm there, since I stumbled across this one, there was another question. Do a lot of people have family members with PSC? So it can go here. Have any of the participants' family members been diagnosed with PSC? We say it's in this survey, it's 19 out of 360. We actually, in the last Viaduct, just did a piece on looking at the surveys over the years, and we saw it's similar rates. It was around 1.8% or something reported a an immediate family member or something. I don't have the exact statistics. Once we shift to Q&A, I'll look that up and get back to the group. Okay. Going back to diagnosis after transplant, I think I'll have to dive into that on my own. I have it here, I just have to find it. So I think this is a good time for us to transition back to the general Q&A, and please keep sending in those questions. I'll do my best to answer the technical ones, and we've got Susan on deck for that. Okay, so I'm gonna hand it over now to Fred Sabernick. So Fred is from Atlanta, Georgia. He was diagnosed with PSC in 2004, and since he's received 2 liver transplants. He joined the PSC board of directors in 2012 and has served in many roles, including as board chair from 2016 to 2020. So I'm going to hand it over to Fred, who will be moderating the open Q&A, so for more general questions as well. Okay. And if we could get the slides back up.
Thank you, Brian. And thanks to all of the speakers here tonight. Really appreciate some excellent presentations that we've seen here, and I'm sure the audience appreciates it. The registry has been really important to me. I think I was patient 0 on several occasions during the initial formation of the registry, trying to help Rachel work through the various issues that we had in getting the registry actually launched back in 2014. Those were some interesting times. So I'd like to invite the rest of the Q&A panel here to come up on video, and let's go ahead and get started with some of the questions that we have here in our Q&A tab. So one question that got asked kind of early on, and I think it's an important one, is why does it seem like patient-sponsored, patient-centered research is such an afterthought? Why isn't this the rule of thumb instead of just being something that's just coming into play recently? So let me ask that of our panel here.
I don't know that I have the answer, but I can give you my thoughts, and I'd love to hear the rest of the panel's thoughts. I think that most scientists who are not engaging with patients on a daily basis, if they're not clinicians, if they're researchers, I think they question what is the value of spending their time, which is, their scarce time on engaging with patients when they don't know how this will help them. And what I can share is that PSC Partners is currently the recipient of a grant of a somewhat novel patient-partnered research grant that was granted from the CZI Foundation, and they called for proposals from teams doing basic science who would work with a patient partnered. And what we have found in that project, we are now in year 3 of 4, is that both sides are finding this extremely helpful. And I think it's an experience thing. Until you do it, you don't know. So we don't know what we don't know until we try it. I was just recently speaking at a laboratory science at a university, 2 laboratory science students who they came to a session about patient research, because the whole idea of patient-centered research with in basic science, it makes no sense. And we have examples that it does help. It does ground the researchers in the question. It does help for them to learn how to explain it, what they're trying to do, what they're trying to learn to the eventual users of the research. I don't know why it isn't done more often. All I can say is that there are efforts underway and people are quite interested in it. And some of the funders out there, government and private, are kind of making it mandatory to be competitive in their granting process.
Yeah.
That's good to hear.
Sarah, did you want to take this?
Yeah, I'd love to. So, yeah, to add to what Mary said, I think one important aspect is that a lot of people don't realize that patient-led partnership is possible. It hasn't historically been the norm, and the logistics of community engagement, they aren't explicitly taught to everyone. So if you think of our grants program, for example, this year we got approximately 40 applications, and nearly half of them were proposing preclinical studies. So it's very common for an investigator to simply not expect patients to be able to be involved in research at such an early stage, because they might not know about the ways that patient partnership can pan out, whether it's through the study design, the data analysis, or the knowledge translation. So with all that in mind, we encourage all kinds of stakeholders to attend our webinars, our conferences, all of our events, so that people can connect with and learn from each other and form and sustain these new partnerships. The other aspect I wanted to point out, it's very unique to PSC Partners, is patient-led research. It might not always be possible. PSC obviously can take a toll on people's daily life and their quality of life, and it takes a lot of time and effort and resources to accomplish patient-partnered research. So it's not just that PSC is rare, it's that we're in a very rare position where we have such a skilled, committed, engaged community. We're full of dedicated volunteers and team members who truly can accomplish groundbreaking research and model what patient partnership can look like for other organizations. So please keep loving this concept and spreading the word about it, because awareness and role modeling, it really can inspire major changes, not just for PSC, but for other rare diseases too.
I
Thanks.
think I think just adding on, talking from my perspective as a statistician too, and as a patient, patients know their experience. They have so much knowledge to give. There is something to be said for, as a researcher, trying to take that knowledge and distill it into something that can be analyzed for research. And so those things are somewhat at odds with each other. Whenever you're recording data, there is a slight loss of information, right? Nothing's going to be perfect, even as someone who's involved in survey design. So it's all about, like, that explains partially why it's so important, because patients can help ensure that the correct data is being collected in the first place, that you're asking the right questions, right? And it takes there's a lot of inertia when you have a basis of knowledge built on things that were designed from a researcher standpoint. It takes a big shift, but it is important to work to do. And I'm really proud to be a part of an org that is doing that so much.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, as a patient myself, I'm keenly interested in helping participate and furthering research. So, how does joining the registry help me as a patient perhaps find people who are offering novel treatments, new treatments, and potentially new solutions?
Yeah. So among the things we do with the newsletter, we try and keep everyone up to date with the latest research. As we said before, we do work on recruitment for clinical trials in that de-identified way. So we're never giving away information, but it is important for that we have your most accurate information for that. So the registry is a starting place for all of that. We don't know your full clinical history 100%. For instance, we don't collect lab data. So we can't check that as an inclusion exclusion criteria because oftentimes people want your ALP from your blood test to be in a certain range. But it is a start. We try and be up to date. We try and move nimbly with response to studies. And so I think we have had a pretty good turnaround with that. Mary or Rachel, anything to add?
I would just say that if you are in the registry, and you get these opportunities, the more our people respond and ask about these studies, the more the drug development companies or the researchers will come back to us. As Rachel mentioned earlier, we have one researcher who has recruited for several studies, and their study coordinators say they can tell when someone is coming to them from the registry because the PSC Partners registry participants they chase after the study, whereas often it's the study trying to chase after participants. So I would just say stay engaged because that will help bring more opportunities to your inbox.
Thanks, Mary. Another question from the Q&A. Is there a registry for parents of patients? How can parents help participate in the registry?
Yeah, I think I was able to address that earlier, that we do have caregiver profiles that they can join on behalf of their patients. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Brian. So we have 2,600 people in the registry. Why do we need more?
Mary, you want to take this one? Been talking a lot. Oh, Mary, you're muted. Sorry.
Sorry. Yeah, why do we need more? Well, because there's so much variability in PSC. The bigger the data set, the better we'll be able to describe the experience. And also, we have 2,600 participants. Those are people who have at some point set up an account. They have read the informed consent. They have consented to have their information stored in the registry, and most likely they took at least one survey. But for this registry to be as valuable as possible, we need people who are taking surveys across time repeatedly. And so that's part of why we need to get more people in. And also practices change. So, for example, maybe 15 years ago, people were having ERCPs more regularly for therapy, or people were getting biopsies for diagnosis. So we want to capture how things are changing over time. And so you need newly diagnosed people to be joining the registry to share their diagnosis experience. I mean, there's just more information will help us understand PSC better. And 2,600, it sounds like a large number, but if you think about the fact that we estimate 30 to 50,000 people in the United States living with PSC, we could have a tremendously more valuable data set if we can increase that number.
Some
And
of that
statistician Brian, I do think you should add some more to that.
Yeah, I mean, from a basic standpoint, the more responses you have, the more certain you are in the registry reflecting the reality of people living with PSC. Other things are sometimes you want to subset by certain conditions. We've had some questions about overlap conditions and things like that. Those numbers get really small when you start asking like, okay, what are women in this age's experiences with this? So it sounds like it's a lot, but it's really not from a statistical standpoint. The other thing is from a research standpoint, researchers get excited to see a larger registry. There's more interest, there's more made possible through that, including clinical trials. We do send out emails for small trials that are like only at one site as well. And so that's where it's useful. If you happen to be one of the people in the university and they only need 10 people, we might only be able to reach 3 people in that area. And so that's why those numbers really do matter.
Thanks, Brian. So, what can the registry tell us about fatigue in PSC? How are patients experiencing fatigue in PSC?
Yeah. Um, well, we know that it's a very common symptom that's reported. We have a lot of data on it. I will say one thing that comes to mind at first glance is thinking about the cholangitis attack was one of the new insights we got into this, that when participants experience PSC flares or cholangitis attacks, fatigue is one of the most prevalent symptoms. Of course, that's the case most of the time, but even more so, it is the top two symptoms, I believe, along with liver pain. And we saw it was also the least resolved symptom. So after their attack ended, I believe 30% or higher still didn't have a return to baseline. So those are the types of insights that can only be made possible through the registry. We know fatigue is so important, but quantifying it and getting these sorts of insights is much stronger. I mean, we know our anecdotal experiences, but for researchers, that really drives it home. Yeah. But we do have lots of questions on fatigue. If you go to the Analyze tab, you can pour through them yourself.
And then I just
Great.
want to reiterate that we are going to be implementing this newly designed fatigue tool that has been designed through the SAP project into the registry soon. That tool was very carefully designed, taking into account very specific statistical design processes. They've done these very thorough interviews. And so we're going to be able to collect better information about the fatigue experience. And so we have some information now. We're going to have more information. And I encourage everybody, when those instruments get launched in the registry, to go in and complete them.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mary. So, Brian and Mary, so the registry website looks great, and love the ability to add daily symptom checks and monitoring and things like that. But we live in a mobile world, so what are the plans potentially for adding a mobile app potentially to the registry data collection or registry interface?
It's a good question. We can talk to the Matrix team who does the software development for it. I don't know that there are mobile app plans in place, but that being said, it is fully mobile accessible. The only caveat I will give to that is as you're signing up for the first time, the informed consent can be a little tricky to read on mobile. So if you do have a desktop for that, you'll just find it a little bit easier to go through that, just when you're joining.
Sure, sure. Okay, another question from Q&A. Will the regular annual questionnaire embrace continuous improvement and expand questions and response options?
Yeah, absolutely. We've made some changes this past year. We're starting on the process early, so in the next couple months we'll be getting started on redesign. We'll definitely looking to figure out where the areas for improvement. We've already identified a few, but we're always looking for feedback on that.
Yeah, and that's what I was just going to reiterate, right? If there's something when you take a survey that you're like, I really wish they had asked me about this, send us a note. We have periodically over the past few years sent out surveys asking, what do you wish we'd asked? Give us your ideas. Because we only know our experiences. We want to represent everybody's experience. So let us know how we can make those surveys better.
And if I can
Please
just
send those suggestions, Mary.
If I can circle back to the mobile question, Susan helpfully pointed out that when you go on the mobile website to log in, there's a quick add symptoms and activities. So that symptom log I was showing you, very easy to just do it on the go on mobile. So
Excellent.
And I will just say registry coordinator at PSC Partners, pscpartners.org, registry coordinator at pscpartners.org is the email for the registry. And you can just go to the PSC Partners registry website and you'll find the link to that too.
Okay. So if you're adding your providers on the registry, do you need to check with your hepatologist, gastroenterologist, your team members before adding them to the registry list of data?
we don't require that. It is your choice to add them. One thing you can do if you want to have a conversation with them is to encourage them to talk to their other PSC patients about the registry. That is a very helpful thing for us.
We also do not put, if somebody adds their doctors and puts in information that isn't publicly available, we will not post that. So we are just posting publicly available, what could be found on the clinic website.
Exactly.
Great. So if you're unable to participate in research, maybe you're post-transplant, maybe you don't qualify for various aspects of lots of research studies, how can people, who don't qualify for trials and things like that, how can they advance the cause of PSC research?
Yeah, I think especially for the post-transplant community, that's an area where we are looking to make sure we're staying engaged in the registry. I know it's common to see that drop off, but it's really important to know what happens after transplant. That is just a data point. There's so much more to the journey, and it is interesting to be able to look at that. These people are notoriously hard to get in touch with. So if you're someone who's willing to, like, we really, really encourage it. As we mentioned, we're working on a post-transplant survey to really bring in those experiences. Yeah.
So we did just talk about post-transplant. I'm sorry. So what kind of data gaps do you think are in what would you like to have in the registry that maybe we're not collecting today? What do we need from participants that would help fill in any gaps that you think we might have?
Well,
Go ahead, Mary.
I was just going to say, as we mentioned, and this is a difficult one, is that we don't have any data on what happened to the people who are no longer in the registry or no longer responding because they have passed away. But that is critically important to know what happened. And so we are in the process of launching a survey for the bereaved that will collect critical information so that we can share that. We can learn from it.
Mhm. Some other things, we're just always looking to make the registry more representative of the community as a whole. We know that the registry is majority woman represented. That's the opposite of what is the case for PSC. So men, I'm calling on you. We're also looking at, people in other areas, underrepresented areas, rural especially. Then we're working on, as we mentioned, translation to try and reach new communities. Another thing that we're working on too, as we mentioned, the electronic health records reintegration, we're still in progress, but we're hoping to get it to a place where we can start adding, when people are willing to, their lab data, because being able to connect patient-reported outcomes with clinical lab data really brings us to a new level of biomarker development, outcomes research. It really makes a whole new level of study possible.
And the amount of interest from researchers when they hear that might be possible in the near future is just incredible.
Fantastic. So what can PSCers who aren't living near centers and really can't participate in, trials and things, what can they do to help?
Well, the good news is a lot of trials are now moving to a virtual or remote option where they will send a nurse to you to collect labs. So that's definitely something that to be on the lookout for. If you look on the clinical trials page, we do list when they have that remote or virtual option. And it's definitely something we try and advocate for in the research process. The other thing is too, if you're in remote, oftentimes look at how frequently you actually need to go in for the studies, because if it's something you're willing to do, and they can sometimes reimburse you for travel expenses. So there are ways they might be willing to work with you and make it possible, even if the virtual option isn't there.
Yeah, the other thing I would emphasize is that if you receive an email saying you might be eligible, you are making zero commitment to call and ask questions. So call and ask your questions. Find out if they can offer any travel support. You may be surprised.
Mhm.
Is it possible to get the SAP questionnaires if people are interested in participating in them and may not be part of a regular study?
Well, they're going to be in the registry. They're not yet finished, but yes, they can join the registry and complete them in the registry.
And Mary, correct me if I'm wrong, is the research team still looking for new interviewers to participate in interviews?
I believe they are still looking for a few people who are experiencing brain fog, fatigue, and cognitive. No, what's the other one? Brain fog,
Cognitive
fatigue.
impairment, brain,
No, brain
liver
Liver
pain.
pain.
Liver pain. Thank you. Yes, for these interviews. So you can find where will that information be, Brian? On the
I'll find a
website?
link for it and post it in the chat.
Okay.
Yeah. I know the criteria, you do have to be in US or Canada and above 18 for that, I believe.
And I would just say, I mean, it's probably obvious, but I'll say it again, join the registry. We have so many surveys that come out and they're not all ours. The other thing that happens is a researcher. So for example, a recent one, the University of Miami, they're doing a very interesting survey on quality of care. They want to find out if in the US, if patients are receiving what is recommended through the AASLD guidance for care. And so they're collecting this information and they're going to report on it. So those kind of things will be distributed through the registry. That is a great way to participate.
Fantastic. Sarah, this might be a question for you. It's a 30,000-foot question. So how exactly is the registry enabling the broader goal of finding a cure for PSC?
I hope I'm not alone in answering this. Please feel free to chime in others, but that is why I started out with talking about our broader research strategy. And I said over and over, the registry, just think of that puzzle piece metaphor, where the registry, it's facilitating, it's enabling, it's inspiring people to connect and people to connect at scale. So partnership really makes a difference. It's such an important piece of our name and our identity. And I mean, all of our 4 core research pillars are rooted in our mission, right? And all of the pillars, even though it's focused on research, it does still involve the part of our mission about providing support more broadly. So knowledge translation, anything else that we're hearing that's important from the community. So all that to say, the registry is enabling research and partnerships, and that I believe is necessary for finding a cure. And again, stay tuned for that grants program impact report, because you'll see really good examples of how these partnerships can inspire and model change for the entire field of PSC, associated diseases, and rare diseases more largely.
And I'll just say, if a cure is going to involve a drug, that drug must be tested in humans in order for it to be approved for use in humans. And that means a clinical trial. And because PSC is so rare, it is hard to recruit for these studies. But we need investors to say, we want to invest in this drug program. So the fact that we are making it easier for drug companies to find patients, to see if they're eligible to participate in these studies, that we believe makes PSC more attractive as one of the 10,000 rare diseases out there. That we do believe that the registry is helping attract interest in working on PSC.
Okay, do we have any more questions in the Q&A? Oh, here's a good one. Have there been any studies or capture of data that catches double or triple our PSC? Speaking as a doubler, that's particularly important to me.
The literature is thin on recurrent PSC. What I can say is that there is a international network project that was originally funded by PSC Partners Canada. It was a Young Investigator Award to Dr. Aliya Ghulam Hussain, and she has set up a international network through the IPSC study group, the International PSC Study Group. And we are actually going to be having Dr. Aliya Ghulam Hussain speak at a PSC Partners event this Saturday. So I will ask her for an update on where things stand with that study. But again, PSC is rare. PSC post-transplanters with recurrent PSC is more rare. So again, it's hard. So staying connected to the registry so that we can get numbers so that people can be studied really helps.
Thanks, Mary. Any other questions in the Q&A?
Fred, if I can hop in, there were just a couple data point questions that he didn't get to
Sure.
follow up on earlier. So there was a question earlier about pancreatitis after ERCPs. We don't have data on pancreatitis currently. That's a great suggestion, and we'll note it for future survey development. Other questions around family inheritability of PSC. We have 5% of respondents in the registry have immediate or extended family with PSC.
Thanks, Brian. Okay. I want to thank everyone, Brian, Sarah, Mary, Rachel, fantastic answers. Thank the participants for asking questions, and our questions, your questions don't have to stop here. You can certainly continue to ask them offline. Thank you, everyone.
And thank you. I truly want to thank Sarah, Rachel, Mary, and Brian again for covering so many important topics. Thanks to Mahesh and Fred for your insights, moderating the Q&A, and your work as members of the Board of Directors. Next slide. Oh, it's here. Please take the time to go to pscpartners.org to stay updated about our future events. Most exciting, the 2021, the 21st annual conference is September 11th through 14th in Denver. The venue there is wonderful. The conference agenda will be exciting and will be posted soon, including some special PSC IBD sessions with guest speakers. Registration is now open via the QR code, so feel free to register. Our popular Zoom rooms, peer group Zoom rooms, continue. If you've not attended a Zoom room before, please join one of these casual sessions to share PSC experiences and concerns with others in your group. So you can see that date is May 13th, 6 to 7:30, and the groups listed there, those living with PSC, spouses and caregivers, parents of children with PSC, teens, they are all going to separate breakout rooms. So you have privacy and you're in a group with your peers. In addition, we encourage everyone to join the patient registry as well as our mentor program. I hope that you were inspired through the registry session and that will give you even more incentive to either join the registry or take the time to update your clinical survey and take some of those good surveys that are listed there. Everyone in the PSC Partners Patient Registry is an important voice in research. In a rare disease like PSC, research needs everyone's voice. Please listen to our monthly podcasts on the various PSC-related topics. Be sure to sign up for our mailing list and follow us on social media. If you're a Canadian, this is really important. Please visit pscpartnerscanada.ca. And if you're near Toronto this weekend, this Saturday, please join the free patient event happening this Saturday. Register at pscpartners.ca under the events. Registration closes soon. Could somebody jump and put the pscpartners.ca website in the chat so that people can see that? That'd be great. Next slide. Thank you for joining tonight's webinar. Please complete the exit survey by scanning the QR code below or by clicking on the survey link that's going to arrive in your mailbox momentarily. We appreciate any suggestions you have to offer us, and any of your comments, please send them. Thank you so much for attending tonight.